I spent a lot of time yesterday talking about affordability and talking about that survey that we did. But it is really, given that union workers earn more than non-union workers, still union workers are living overwhelmingly paycheck to paycheck. And 60% of the workers that we surveyed or who filled out that survey, 3/4 told us that they were living paycheck to paycheck, but 60% said it was because of the costs of everyday necessities rising higher than their paychecks. But there's another reality, and that's really what I'm about to focus on with these two amazing panelists that we confront. And at the last convention, we had some conversations about this, particularly with Lena Khan. But right now, big financial companies know exactly how stressed working people are, and too often they are profiting from the financial insecurity that puts people deeper and deeper into debt. And so it becomes a circle that even our members are experiencing. And I want to say something to all of you that I know so many feel, because I've had so many conversations about student debt with so many people within our membership. I want people to stop feeling shame and to understand that a lot of this bullshit is because financial companies and credit card companies and medical debt and all of them are actually exploiting this cost of living crisis. Yep. And it's time for them to stop. But the only way we're going to get them to stop is both having people really knowing what their rights are and being able to change laws. And that, the changing laws require politics, but being able to know your rights is something that we as a union can do for each other. And that is what we're trying to do here. And that's why for the next just 20 minutes or so, we're just going to talk about this so that you have a taste of what the AFT is doing. So Aissa Canchola is here. She's the policy director at Protect Borrowers. She was the former legislative director and deputy chief of staff for Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She is also a longtime partner of AFT in our fight to cancel student debt. And in fact, about a week ago, together, we won a major lawsuit against the Trump administration in terms of trying, remember what they tried to do is basically say they get to decide who gets public service loan forgiveness. And the court said, based upon the suit we brought, no, public service loan forgiveness is for everyone who is in the public service. You don't get to decide because you don't like what somebody is teaching.
That's right.
And then we have a new partner here, and that is Tiffany. I'm going to pronounce your name wrong.
Aliche.
Aliche. Sorry. I'm going to
like
Tiffany
ceviche.
Aliche, like ceviche. Now, Tiffany, this is what's incredible about Tiffany. Tiffany was a school teacher. She was laid off. And what she has done is that she figured out a way to turn not only her life around, but she understood in that period of time, in that liminal space, in that breach, the practical tools that she needed. And then what she has done is created those tools for everyone else. And we now have a partnership with Tiffany to ensure that you get to have those tools. You may have heard her on Mel Robbins' podcast, saw her on Netflix, saw her on the Today Show, the Good Morning America, Mark and Kelly. Many of you may recognize her from social media. She helped pass a law in New Jersey requiring financial literacy in middle schools, and she is known normally as Tiffany the Budgetista. But let me just say thank you, both of you, for being here.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask Aissa the question first and Tiffany the question second, and then we're going to have like one other follow-up question. But we wanted you to get a taste of what we're trying to do, and we want people to be able to use it and be able to make sure our members know the resources that are available. So when a credit card company is at somebody's throat, they know the resources. When medical debt is knocking on people's doors, they know the resources. Yes, we hope everybody gets to where UESF and UFT have gotten to, but we know there's a long way to go. So, Aissa, at Protect Borrowers, you work with people who are carrying student debt and financial stress, and you've worked with them for years. How much of what working people are experiencing are about personal financial decisions, and how much is it about this system that has become increasingly unaffordable?
Thank you for that question, and hello, everyone. It's so great to be here with you all. You know, I think it's really important that we remember that so many of the challenges that people are experiencing today are the results of generations of intentional policies. Policies that have been created by politicians here in Washington, D.C., in state capitals across the country, that for too long have benefited the richest Americans, the biggest corporations, at the expense of working people. You know, Randy, you brought up student debt earlier, right? There are 43+ million Americans across the country who owe over $1.7 trillion in student debt. Now, does that mean 43 million Americans just made the poor financial choice to sign on the bottom line, on the dotted line for loans that would follow them for the rest of their working lives? No, right? For generations, we've told our kids that if you invest in yourself, in education, and in job training, that you would be able to get into the middle class. But for too many, that promise never paid off, right? We had an entire for-profit college sector that profiteered off of vulnerable people. We've had an entire administrations that push folks further into debt, student loan servicers that get millions of dollars when people struggle and when they push them further away from public service loan forgiveness and other types of programs. But it's not just student debt. You know, we see it across people's financial lives. You know, for instance, you know, there are millions of Americans struggling to afford childcare. They're going into debt to pay for childcare. We just recently did a report that showed over 20% of people, respondents to our poll, were taking on buy now, pay later loans to pay their childcare bills. Going into the red to stay afloat. 100 million people across the country owe medical debt. Is that because they didn't save enough just in case they got cancer? No. That's because we have policymakers who refuse to see healthcare as a human right. That's why we still don't have universal healthcare in this country. And so when you acknowledge the systemic failures, you know, you can acknowledge that there are people who've made these laws and made this reality. You can also push for people to change them. Because when they just stay as individual failures, you're able to kind of give these policymakers a pass from doing what we need them to do.
Exactly. So what of what's going on, and then I'm going to go to Tiffany, and both of you may want to answer this question. What of what's going on would you attribute to a broken system, both of you, and what would you attribute to just to personal financial decisions?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would attribute some of our biggest, the rising household debt crisis that we have. We have record numbers of Americans in credit card debt, rising auto loan debt, buy now, pay later debt. People don't have the luxury of making those decisions. It's these companies that are capitalizing on a financial desperation right now that is unlike anything we've ever seen. We have credit card delinquency crisis that now is about to surpass what we were experiencing in the financial crisis. And so when people try to attribute that to personal financial decisions, that misses the entire context in which it's happening. And then you are also seeing companies that are just at the same time raking in record profits. We have America's first ever trillionaire. So it can't be the financial decisions of millions of Americans while our policies are creating trillionaires. You can't have it that way.
So, Tiffany, what I would like you to do for a second, if you can, is, you have the lived experience of our members. You were a teacher before you were a budgetista. So pretend for a minute that you're sitting at a kitchen table with an AFT member. And this is after a long day in a classroom or a long shift in a hospital. And watching them, and I said this yesterday about, I watched my parents do this, try to figure out what to do at an end of a month or the middle of the month when they're trying to figure out what to do with bills, and they're feeling like, they're not feeling good about it. So what would you say to them, or what's the first move that you would advise people?
Well, I've been there. I've been at the kitchen table trying to figure out. So I taught preschool for 10 years. I loved my babies. I don't know how y'all middle school teachers do it. Right? I'm like, you guys are saints. But I loved my babies. And I started off at $39,000 a year. I can remember. Then I was a victim of a credit card scam from somebody who was supposed to be a friend that left me $35,000 in credit card debt. Then I had student loan debt, $50,000. I got my master's in education. I thought I was going to become a principal, decided I didn't want to do that. And then I bought a house in my 20s, one that I really couldn't afford, for $220,000. It was a condo. So I had almost $300,000 in debt. And then during the Great Recession, my school closed because it was a nonprofit-based school and they lost their funding. So I had all these bills and no money. And I remember I was 29 going on 30, and I had to move back home. And I know everyone doesn't have this option, but with my parents. And I felt so bad during that time. And here's what I wish I could have told that Tiffany, who was really struggling to try to figure out what am I supposed to do? Because at 30, that's when you're supposed to be officially an adult. And I felt like a kid sleeping in my middle school bed. Because my little sister at the time, who had the mother-in-law suite, said, I'm the captain now. You can't stay here. You got to go upstairs and sleep on the second floor. And what I was feeling was extreme shame. Extreme shame. I was calling myself everything but a child of God. I was saying, Tiffany, you are a mistake instead of you've made a mistake. And it wasn't until I realized that shame shields solutions. Who here, let me do a quick exercise. Who here has made a financial mistake in the last year that has given them a little bit of shame that they might be feeling now? And so one of the things I realized about shame is that it makes you feel like you're alone. And I realized that in order to release that shame, I had to share my story, and I had to find someone to tell that to, and that was my best friend, Linda. That was the first step, to release the shame. I told my best friend. She was like, well, girl, I had to move back home with my mom, too. And Sarah had to move back with her parents, and this person was sleeping on this person's couch. And I realized that, okay, from releasing the shame, now I can put aside some of the panic and start working on a plan. I just started listing all of my financial stuff. So if you are navigating that situation right now, find your Linda, which really is your union, right? Someone, a safe place that you can share, here's where I'm struggling, and let's just start to write down exactly what's happening with your money. How much do you owe? Who do you owe? What's the interest rate? How much debt? How much do you make? You have to have it down on paper first before we can do anything about it.
So this is a spoiler alert. A lot of what Tiffany is saying, we now have a partnership with Tiffany, so we will have a lot of this on our website. We're going to have videos. We're going to do all of that. So this is not a one and done. We are really, that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this panel. So let me just, before I announce the the resources and the partnership. Let me just ask both of you one more question, which is, you know, Aissa, what's the balance? I mean, you and I, we do this all the time with Protect Borrowers and AFT. But what's the balance, in some ways, between individual action and collective action? Like, when do we, I mean, you probably didn't hear it. JS yesterday talked about his student loan and how, you know, he just offhandedly heard what we were doing because most people believe, oh, it's my responsibility. What's the balance between individual action and collective action?
That's such an important question, and I think what we've learned from the issue of student debt is we only started to get policymakers to care about it when people left that shame and spoke up and shared their personal story and showed policymakers that, no, this was not my bad decision that I made doing literally everything right? It was, and guess what? It's not just me. It's hundreds of thousands and millions of people across communities that are across the country. And so I think what's important is the best way you can take action is by sharing your story and using that to equip AFT to hold these bad actors accountable, right? Randy, you mentioned the lawsuit that we just were successful in on the PSLF front just last week. Earlier this year, we also sued Secretary McMahon for trying to take affordable monthly payments off of the table for public service workers. That was only possible by using the stories of AFT members who came out of the out of the shadows to say this is going to harm me and my family. And so the balance is it's so important to take action as an individual, and by doing that in the collective, that's how we build the momentum. That's how we build the pressure and we force policymakers to have the political will to do stuff that helps us and not the richest and wealthiest donors.
And Tiffany, I have to ask you this question because you have broken in both as a female leader and as an African-American leader. You have broken into the financial sector. You both just heard how, look, Lee, first African-American leader of AFSCME, me, I think I'm the first gay leader of any union ever. But being the first is really hard, but also being in a field that is so dominated by men and by white dudes. So what challenges do you think affect underrepresented communities in finance and financial education? And how have you navigated it?
So when I started the budget, I've only ever had two jobs, preschool teacher and the Budgetista. Because as I was trying to figure out and learn about money, it just was like, do I have to have my master's to read this book? Like, why isn't it just explained to me like as if I was 3 or 4 years old? And I told myself, if I learn it, I'm going to reteach it in a way that everyone can understand. And so I feel like, it's really hard. Anyone who's teaching 3 and 4-year-olds, anybody preschool teachers, kindergarten teachers, you know how hard it is. They don't have any point of reference. You can literally be like, okay, today we're going to learn about red like an apple. They're like, what's an apple? You're like, oh my gosh, we got to start from the beginning. So I realized that if I can learn how to manage my money, I could reteach it in a way like, oh, this is actually how you budget step by step. So I wrote a book on that. And my fellow teacher friends who read it, they were like, oh, Tiffany, this is just a lesson plan expanded. I'm like, exactly. I said, then I can also bring other financial educators on that are also educators. I built a platform that's taught 200,000 adults how to navigate, and you guys will get some of those videos, how to navigate. And so it was really hard, but to me, nothing is harder than teaching. It is one of the most transferable skills to almost any other thing that you want to do, because you're not just a teacher, you're a parent, you're the janitor, you're the nurse, you're the finance director, and so what I realized is that if I can do this, there's really nothing else that I can't do. And really, I leaned into my community. The first set of people that I taught financial education to were teachers. you know, because I knew what it was to live on a limited budget and to be one to provide for other people who are around you. And so I just think that, like, for me, it was just understanding that, like, there was nothing that I was not capable of, and leaning into my community, knowing that they were going to support me because I was here to support them.
So I know the time is late, so I'm just going to say, I want to, somebody's laughing. I'm going to announce that next week we are launching a joint campaign with Protect Borrowers. It's called the One Big Bad Bill, where we are calling on people to publicly share how much their student loan bill increased as a result of Trump's one big ugly bill. So that's starting next week. And then I'm also thrilled to announce that the AFT is going to be partnering with Budgetista, Tiffany herself, and you're going to see a series of videos how to build financial foundations. You're going to see it on aft.org/affordability. Keep an eye on the social channels, and we're going to keep on doing a lot of the kind of work and kind of resources that Tiffany just talked about. So let me share with me or join me in thanking Aissa. Yes.
I just want to give, because many of us are teachers here, I'm going to give you a little bit of homework, right? So not just your students. So if there's one thing that you can do today for your money, right, there's just one thing, is I want you to, what I call, split it before you get it. You can tell I taught preschool. Split it before you get it. Write it down. I want you to split your paycheck into 4 different categories. 2 checking, 2 savings. You can go to HR, you can go to payroll. Checking 1 for spending. Debit card can be attached there. That's fine. Checking 2 for bills. No debit card. I don't want you swiping away your bill money. Savings 1, high yield savings for emergencies. This is where some money's going to go there every month or every paycheck. Savings 2 for goals. If you split your check before you get your check, you don't have to budget as hard. You don't have to be as disciplined. You don't have to worry. The money comes in, it splits, and you know your bill money is set aside, your spending is set aside, your saving is set aside, and even if you haven't budgeted for that month, your money is where it's supposed to be, okay? Split it before you what? There you go. A++.
Thank you, Aissa, and thank you, Tiffany.